Well, hello, my friends. Welcome back to another episode of Legacy Farm, the podcast. I'm your host, JC Young, and today's topic and discussion is this: God does not react, he responds. So today, guys, I actually want to start off and talk a little bit more about some of my daily work here and just some of the lessons I took away from going through this daily work this morning. And today's topic and discussion was all around reacting versus responding, and ultimately how we get different results when we're choosing to react versus when we're choosing to respond. Now, what it was talking about was how when we react, typically reactions are born out of emotions, right? Somebody says something to us, it triggers the hell out of us, so we choose to react negatively inside of that moment. The problem is, though, is that when this does happen, we ultimately have to ask our questions like, is reacting really getting us the thing that we want inside of that moment? Are we getting the actual result that we're going after? And at the end of the day, the number one thing that I really care about in my life is getting certain results here, not in a selfish way or anything like that, in more of a way of acting out of self-interest versus selfishness. And when I act out of self-interest, because I'm trying to put myself in the best possible position so that I can benefit all of those around us. And when we react and we respond emotionally, I'm not really getting the results that I want. Now, just like you, I have definitely screwed up on this more times than I can count, especially when it comes to raising kids and things like that. But the tougher thing here is the mistakes and reactions I've had when it came to making critical business decisions, right? And those are the things that really I just always remember. I'm sure you do too. You can look back at every decision you made in the business. There's certain things like, honestly, you could probably just pull up your balance sheet right now, look at the assets that you have there, and literally go through and just line by line put reaction, reaction, reaction. When you just bought things impulsively in the moment, ultimately you ended up not getting what you wanted there, or it didn't work out the way you wanted it to, and things like that. But at the end of the day, when we react, I'm ultimately not getting what I want out of any specific situation. Ultimately, it's detrimental to me, but also those around me as well, which is another tougher pill to swallow there, because our actions as business owners, as leaders, man, we impact everybody else around us, right? We are going to ultimately determine some of the results that they get in their lives as well, based on the reactions that we have and things like that. Now, let's jump over and actually talk about responding, right? And what happens when we choose to respond. And when I'm talking about, with the title of this episode being that God does not react, he responds. When we're choosing to respond, there's one critical thing that we're choosing to do before making a decision or saying anything or anything like that. And that is, we are creating the ability to have space, right? We're creating space in that moment. And this is arguably one of the most valuable skill sets that you can learn as a business owner, and is especially true for myself as well here, because man, when I react emotionally in the moment, I'm not getting what I want. But if I have the awareness to look at the situation from a 10,000 or 30,000 foot view and force myself to pause, right? To create space. So for example, my wife says something to me, you know how this is going to go. Historically, I've always reacted in the moment. I say something that comes to my mind, like first thing that comes to my mind, it's typically a dumb thing that puts me in a position that I don't want to be in. And then it turns into this huge fight that was not necessary. Versus, what if she said something and I had the awareness to recognize the trigger that I had, but then also to create space in that moment. Right? And by space, I mean literally walking into the other room or saying, hey, let me think about what you just said. I'm going to choose not to respond right now because I'll react emotionally. Let me go downstairs. Let me just process this a little bit and think about it. And then come back 3 to 5 minutes later, more composed, more calm, and with a thoughtful and strategic response versus an immediate reaction, right? Imagine how different that would be. Now, what I want you to consider though, is what would happen in your business if you chose to, instead of reacting all the time, you chose to start responding, right? And what I mean by that is before you have any big decision, you are creating that space. You have the awareness to understand that, hey, maybe a new piece of ground pops up. And I use this example all the time in all my trainings and everything, but we know how farmers love ground, and a new piece of ground pops up, and you can justify it and tell yourself whatever story you want to get yourself to pull the trigger on that piece of ground, like it'll never come up again, or it's right next to all of our other ground, it'll fit in great with our operation, yada, 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 right? We can go round and round on that. But at the end of the day, if you have the awareness to create space in that moment and say, okay, great, I know that I just got a call. I just got offered this piece of ground to buy it. Instead of just reacting right away, calling my banker and asking them if I can go ahead and, put a price down on this, or even worse, responding to the owner that's trying to sell the ground, you pause. Right? You create space and you say, hey, you know what? I appreciate you offering it to me, but give me 2 or 3 days here just to look at my numbers. And guess what, guys? If he says, well, I already have so-and-so interested in it and they may pull the trigger. Okay, great. That means that it may not be for you. That means that God actually may be saving you for making a bad financial decision and ultimately putting yourself in the type of financial position you can't afford to be in at this moment, right? That's how I look at these things. If it has to happen fast, then it's ultimately not going to be the decision for me, because everything great in my life has come through time. Not one single thing that I have great in my life came quickly, came out of a reaction. Not one single thing, right? Everything that's come that's been great to my life, that's been an overall net positive in my life, came from creating space and having patience and letting my journey just kind of take place that God has planned for me. And the thing is, and what we need to understand is that when we're reactive, when it comes to like making a major financial decision, which I've said before, there's no financial decisions in farming nowadays, man, we can save ourselves so much heartache there, so much financial stress. And the thing is that some of these mistakes that people are making in making these quick reactionary financial decisions on the farm operation, these are decisions that are actually setting them back multiple years into the future. For some of them, it's several decades into the future because their operation is not ready to handle that level of debt or make that size of payment or any of the above, right? There's several different things that could ultimately carry into playing in that scenario. But again, let's pretend that you're just responding to this, right? And this is what I want all of our customers inside of Legacy Farmer to do, is to have the awareness that, hey, yes, we're going to get these opportunities. And guess what? Going forward in the next 2 to 3 years, you're going to get a lot of opportunities because there's unfortunately going to be a lot of people that go out of business over the next 2 to 3 years because they did not plan appropriately or made emotional decisions in the past 2 to 3 years. That's ultimately going to come back to bite them in the ass. And for most of them, it's going to sink the operation. So you're going to have plenty of opportunity. But what I want to train and continue helping our customers to do is when those opportunities come up, we're creating space first. And the first thing that we're doing is going and updating numbers. We're planning out the possible scenario of what it would look like from multiple sides of our operation, operationally, from a financial standpoint, from a banking standpoint, from a tax standpoint, and putting the numbers into our software that we use in Legacy Farmer called Farmer Metrics, and doing the best that we can to get ultimate clarity into this decision and how it's going to impact our operation from every single vantage point, right? And that's the thing that a lot of people don't consider is that, yeah, they may be going out and buying something, but they're only considering it from 1 or 2 vantage points in the operation. They're not really thinking through all the possible outcomes, good and bad, of what could happen from making this financial decision. And this is what happens when you react to things. This is how you set an operation back years, if not decades, by just being reactionary with your financial decisions. Or maybe it's not financial. Maybe it's just a big, team decision or bringing on an additional partner, whatever it may be, right? There's a lot of different things here, but you're ultimately going to be shooting yourself in the foot if you are reactionary in those types of decisions. And I'll say this again, every positive thing that I have in my life came from a responsive type of decision and not a reactionary one. The responsive one requires us to create space. And God is always one that will never react emotionally to a decision. He responds, right? He creates space. He has patience. He is giving himself time to think about the possible solutions here and really analyze this and all the outcomes. One thing, I don't talk about Elon Musk a lot on this podcast or anything, but one episode I watched him one time on another podcast or video on YouTube or something like that. And he always said that if he was asked a question that he didn't know the answer right off the bat, he would sit there and he didn't care if it was an awkward silence or anything. He would sit there for 2 or 3 minutes and think about his response because he knows the negative things that are going to happen if he says something that he wasn't really sure on in the first place and didn't give himself time to process it, because he's going to come back, he's going to be biting his tongue in the future, not wanting to share anything because of the fear he has because he already made this mistake, right? It just ultimately, it's not a net positive for us when we react. And this is from business to personal life to every area in between. So at the end of the day, my friends, when you look at the decisions and look at things you've done the past 5 or 10 years, have you been reactive or responsive when it comes to those types of decisions? For most of you, if you're anything like me, I make mistakes over and over again. I've definitely been more reactionary with my decisions, especially on the personal side of things and the family side of things. And, married and 4 daughters, and there's a lot of emotions in our household, including my own. So I definitely made those mistakes, but it's a constant work in progress for me to try to be better, not only on the business front, right? I want to be responsive when it comes to business, but I still screw up just like everybody else does. I'm a human being, but definitely on the parenting and marriage side of things, that's definitely far more important to me than even on the business side of things, to be responsive there and create space and have the awareness there of what's going on in the room. So my friends, at the end of the day, make sure you are doing the best you can to be responsive to all situations versus reactionary, and you will just save yourself a world of hurt and years of pain, to be honest there. So my friends, hope you found value from this podcast. More importantly, hope you take action because of it, and we'll catch you on the next one.